Make sure to subscribe to the podcast and to leave us a good review. The more reviews we get, the bigger our audience gets, and the bigger our audience gets, the better this podcast will become. Hey, Ricky, let us know ways people can get in touch with us.
Sure, Tim. We've got Twitter, which is @thirdpartyrep, R-E-P. We've got Instagram @thirdparty.repair. Facebook, facebook.com/thirdpartyrepair, and email thirdpartyrepair@gmail.com.
Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, we've touched briefly on this before. Now, when the tech blogs, I remember when the iPhone came out, I didn't even like computers. I wasn't even very techie. I played sports. I wasn't even into computers. I spent all my time outside. iPhone came along. Reading the tech blogs, I used to read it. I had an RSS feed reader when they were the hot thing to do, and I had all the tech blogs on it, and I would be itching for every bit of news that would come out because the news was critical. The news was fresh. There was innovation in the devices, constant innovation. Every single generation there was innovation, and there was innovation on top of innovation that you were waiting for. It was constant. The tech bloggers who had wrote for these websites for years, they were suddenly there. I mean, they weren't used to getting the traffic that they were getting, and they exploded. They got bigger and bigger, and just like anything that gets more attention, it gets politicized, and now you get the tech blogs, they regurgitate the same news releases, the same cycles, they regurgitate them with near enough the same words every time now. They're not critical of problems and issues. They don't even go and try and find problems and issues to try and criticize them. They're happy. The status quo is they put out rumours on the next iPhone that's coming out, or the next iPad, or then whatever it is. They put out rumours, or they do a review when the embargo's lifted. Everyone goes to their website and clicks it. They get paid loads because they've got ads on it, so they get their money. The person they're writing about gets their money because people are going to go and buy their product, and no one in that whole circle gives any damn about actually being hypercritical of the system. Now, if you look at the recent issue with the Hey app on the App Store, which although it's software and it's not directly related to third-party repairs, it is.
What happened?
So the Hey app was pulled from the App Store because the only way to use the app was
before you go on. What is that app?
It's an email client where they look after your data. So they don't harvest your data like Google, etc. would. Your data is kept safe. You subscribe to a name at Hey, or you can have a business account which has your own domain, but it's all safe and secure. So your data is safe. You pay for it. It's a subscription service. They were on the App Store.
It's made by the guys who make Basecamp, right? The
correct.
Software.
So they're not small time developers. They know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. Yeah. It's not their first rodeo. It was pulled from the App Store, and it was pulled because to use the client, after you downloaded the app and you'd open the app, to use the client, you had to subscribe to their service via their website. There was no in-app purchase option for the Hey app subscription. You had to go to their website to do it. Apple said this is against their terms and service. They removed the app from the App Store. Hey app, they've got quite a good voice. The developers have got quite a big voice. So they voiced up saying this is not fair because of X, Y, and Z. And then Apple publicly, they're being a lot more public as of late. They came back and said, no, they're the rules. They're stand as they are. We're not changing it. You're not coming back. You know what you need to do to get back on the App Store. You need to offer in-app. You need to give us a 30% cut of everything that you sell through the app.
That's
You're
right.
not coming back and
it's 30%, isn't it?
30%. So I thought, okay, that sounds fair. It's Apple's supermarket. They choose what goes on their shelves. Yeah, I thought that's fair. So then I thought, okay, I've got Netflix. I'll sign out of Netflix. I'll delete the app. I'll reinstall the app, and I'll see what the app does. So I signed out of Netflix. I deleted the app. I restarted my phone. I reinstalled the app. I opened the app. You cannot do anything in Netflix without being a subscriber to Netflix. You cannot subscribe to Netflix through the Netflix app. It's not possible. It's not even there as an option. So why will little old Hey email app that's trying to build an email platform that's based on privacy, why is that bound by App Store terms of service rules that a company like Netflix isn't bound by? And why, after Phil Schiller has come out and defended their actions with the Hey app email, why are the media then not pulling that to pieces and comparing it to things like Netflix and pointing out how unjust and how unfair and how the rules that they've got for their own supermarket are not applied uniformly across the board? Why is that? Why is that being completely forgotten?
Can I? I'm sure that's just a rhetorical question. I'll try and answer it anyway. It seems to be that the media is forgetting that the people that are clicking are the ones that actually they should be serving, not the actual person who's paying for the clicks. So it's like I go to a grocery store, and the person behind the counter there offers me really bad produce and but pays all their bills on time. Like, look, I don't know, that's probably a really bad analogy, but I'm trying to say that they just look after whoever's actually sending them the information, so to speak, and then when they take it to put it together and then pass it on for me to look at, they keep certain parts of the truth and only reveal other parts of the truth in order to appease the person that actually is the story is about. This is absolutely absurd, and it really happens across. It's not just in our industry; it happens across all of the media, in my opinion, these days. The world in which we live in, the clickbait world, and that's the new model for media organisations, is that they need clicks, and without clicks, they have nothing. And if they were to write something that was true and yet controversial that the public would want to know about, but annoyed enough certain businesses such as Apple, who has a large enough influence, i.e. dollars, within that world or any world, really, they're so big, then they would be in a whole lot of bother, and that would be a bad news for them. They're very happy to throw under throw under the train or throw under the bus or whatever anyone who's not sort of seen to be powerful in that sense, which is kind of messed up. I was saying this off mic to you before. It's probably just something I probably want to add here, which is it's the tech companies that used to be the cool guys in town. They used to be. I mean, I'm 36. When I was 26 and younger, the tech companies like Facebook, like Mark Zuckerberg in his dorm room making Facebook, for example, that whole almost folklore, that whole thing, and Steve Jobs and who he is and where he came from, and sort of him as a character in this play. These guys were cool. They were innovative. They didn't seem to really care about money. You know, whether they did or didn't is irrelevant. It's just more they just didn't care about that. They just wanted to create awesome products. Almost like the only guy like that still, and I'm sure this is probably he's so divisive these days, is Elon Musk. It seems like he's the only, sure, he's probably loaded at the moment, but who cares? He still seems to have this prioritization of innovation over dollars, because he knows that in the long run, if he keeps innovating, then that's going to be probably it's just a principled thing that he has, an ethical thing, which is this is the reason he's doing anything. And if he had no money left, he'd still prefer to be just innovating over and over and over again with nothing than be rich with no innovation. I imagine that's what he thinks. I'd say that if we had him here right now, and Elon, if you want to come on, you're more than welcome to.
He's South African. Yeah. I read the other day he's South African. He was born in South Africa. I didn't know that until the other day. But yeah, you're right. The whole mentality of just putting out good products, not like
it's gone.
Steve Jobs was the same. If you got it right and you innovated and you got it right, then they trusted that the money would follow, and it did. It 100% did. Elon Musk is the only person you could look at now, which is the head of a big company, which, excuse me, that has that mentality that we publicly see anyway. But I don't see any products that are coming out from other companies which are anywhere near that. But the tech writers and the journalists that put this news out, at which point since the iPhone was released, at which point in that time frame did it become okay just to post leaks or news that you fed rather than being investigative? At what point did actually being a journalist and getting to the bottom of this, the type of thing like serialization, which is a huge thing, it's affecting people now, they just don't understand it. And what's going to happen is when people do realize that they're affected by this in a more obvious way, they're going to say, why did I not know about this sooner? And the same tech blogs that are not writing about it now, that are then going to explain why and try and go into technical reasons as to why, they're going to look very stupid. They're going to look very silly when this whole thing has been going on. It's already been going on for years. They're going to look even more silly when it's further down the line and consumers are annoyed because something's happening which has affected them in a really big way. And the tech journalists that should have been writing about it for years and explaining it and effectively stopped Apple from being able to do this in the first place, they stayed silent on it and didn't say a thing. For me, integrity in this world, the internet never forgets is a great term, but integrity is a huge thing. And everything that you say should be, especially when you put it online, should be true and honest to you at that point in time. For me, if you know about these things or you're not being investigative to learn about it, then your integrity is in question for me. Now, that might be firing a big shot at all the journalists that haven't written about serialization, but that is honestly how strongly I feel about this, and that's how big this is for the repair industry. And most importantly, as we discussed before, for end consumers. Not people like you and me, end consumers. They're the ones that will lose out long term with this.
That's right. It's interesting to think that, and this is another thought that I've always had on my mind, which is the idea of creating an industry body. Internationally it doesn't seem to be possible, but third-party repair specifically, not just us, but I think we are, as mobile, tablet, IT, computer, whatever you want to call it, repair companies, as the third-party sort of side of that industry, there's so many of us around the world. We need some sort of industry body that represents us, that in itself is there to protect us and protect us for a damn good reason, because of everything we've been saying, which is that not protect us in the sense that, oh, well, you guys are just other guys with businesses and you need money too, and if you go bust, then, oh no, we need to look after you. I mean, I'll say it again. I'm a free market guy. Like, it's in general, I don't want someone. If someone's going to create a business that's better than mine, and they fill a demand in the market or shift the demand so much that people don't even want my product anymore, then it's time for me to move on. That's perfectly fine. But that's not what's going on here at all. That's not what's happening. This is a monopolization of a market in a way that is an unfair playing field. It's the actual game is an unfair one to play, and consumers miss out at the end of the day, and they are left in the dark about all of this. And what I was saying there is the serialization is a tool that Apple has to, and it's not just Apple. There's no reason why every single company won't eventually be doing this, especially if it works for Apple, because Apple is not only one of the most successful tech industries, they are one of the tech companies. They are one of the most successful companies, just full stop, anywhere. So if they are actually the poster boy for a successful business. And so if anyone's looking to be successful themselves, it's very common to emulate models of businesses that have strategies and models of those businesses. And this side of it, given enough time and enough the wonders of economies of scale kicking in, and this serialization process will just become easier and faster, and something that's just something they can just key into more and more components inside of devices over and over and over. And not just our device, these devices. We've even spoken about the potential of a toaster doing it, for example. That makes complete sense to me. Anything, literally anything that is connected, that is going to be something that not only is something they could do, given what I just said, it's something that they will likely do. And that will hurt everyone. We will all just be, throwing stuff out. That's going to be a huge byproduct of all of this, is the environment. Another thing that we'll be doing is just accepting that if something's broken, it doesn't get fixed. I have to replace it. And I don't think that if you were to pull every Tom, Dick and Harry aside right now and say to them, is that something you'd be okay with, that they would all say yes to that. That's not something they'd be okay with. They would say, well, no, my car breaks down. I want to be able to have it fixed wherever I can. And I want to be able to fix it myself if I know how to fix it. And I want my friend who's bloody good at fixing cars to fix it. And whatever. It doesn't matter. I want it fixed. And we just think we've taken it for granted for so long. And I think people need to really wake up and realize it's just something that's just not necessarily guaranteed and is likely to go away. So,
I'd agree with you. And I mean, you make a good point. The tech companies, they follow each other. They copy each other as and when is needed. I mean, if you look at Apple with WWDC 2020, they've announced widgets for iOS. Which is a great thing they've copied from Android from about 8 years ago. But on off the back of what you've just said, so I've been playing with the iPhone X and up screen repairs. Yeah. So I refurbish. Yeah. The quality of screens that I use for my repairs is, other than going to an AASP, is the creme de la creme. In most cases, I reuse the original touch panel, and the touch panel has a small IC on it. Now, I was sent a picture. One of my friends took the touch panel IC. They used a laser and they took sort of the half of the layer off so that you could see the ICs that were underneath it's like a big grey filled component, but inside it are lots of small components. Now, there's a component in there that Apple used the serial number for to make the True Tone software function work. True Tone is a dynamic display type of thing on your screen. If you didn't have it, you probably wouldn't even notice, to be honest. But it's something that they rely on this serial for the display in order to make that work. Now, there are serial read and writers for the display, so you can copy the serial from the original screen, write it to the new screen. True Tone still works. Everything's hunky-dory, it's all good. He sent me a picture of this display IC with the layers ground off, and I noticed straight away that the EEPROM, which is read-only memory, that stored this serial number, was such an insignificant small component. I mean, it would fit on your fingertip, on an average size fingertip, it would fit on there probably about 40 times. It's so small and insignificant with this IC. It made up roughly 5% of the size of the actual IC. It's such a small component. So it got me to thinking, I've noticed with the iPhone X and up, so that's the X, XR, XS, XS Max, I noticed that our return ratio on touch issue screens, so screens that had gone out with fully working touch, had a couple of iOS updates, and then had come back with touch issues. The rate of return on that wasn't huge, but it was higher than previous models. Now, of course, it was the X and upwards where they changed the design of the screens to use this touch panel layer with this new IC for True Tone. It was this whole new thing. So for the last 4 weeks, I've been, for every screen repair that we do, X and up, I've been swapping the IC from the originally paired screen, so taking the IC off of the original screen, and I've been taking the IC off of the new screen. I've been preparing the little pads, they're tiny little pads, and moving the IC to the new screen, and then putting the repair out with the originally paired IC on the new screen. I've been doing it now for just over 4 weeks, and there's been, out of all of them, there has been one return, and it looks like it was a bad IC job. It looks like I've rushed it in the middle of the day, and it's gone out bad. So that redid that IC job, and that screen was fine. But other than that, it's completely nuked the touch issues. Now, I know with the parts that I use, I'm not alone with having X and up screen repairs come back for touch issues. I know there's people that face that have a lot more, that it's a lot more common for them than it is for me because they use parts which are not as reliable as the parts that I use. The only way it seems to keep your touch from becoming faulty after iOS updates and that type of thing is to retain the original display IC, the original touch IC on the new screen. Now that is so much work for each screen repair, and I don't think that that's accidental. But it is not so. I've got absolutely no idea why. I know there are 2 big touch ICs in this IC, but I've got absolutely no idea why you can fit a display where the touch works absolutely fine, send the repair out, then it comes back with touch faults after a couple of iOS updates. I've got no idea why it does that.
Yeah.
I'm never going to find out why it does that. I've got investigative journalist that's trying to work out why. Here's the information now. Go to Apple and find out why. They're not going to tell us why, even if it was happening. But there it is. I've learned that. I'm not going to... I speak with the community on quite a lot of things. I'm not going to go into too much detail with this from here on out. But there it is. I've got the data to back this up. It's ridiculous that that's what you'd need to do to use good parts and to carry the repair out. Now, off the back of all of the legal proceeding stuff that we've heard of, and this... If you use generic parts which did not have this IC and you put out repairs without True Tone because you didn't care about it, you just used generic parts which were garbage, you wouldn't have this issue. You wouldn't even know about this issue. If all you've been using is garbage crap parts for forever, you're never even going to know this is an issue. Now, the moment that you want to use good parts which are providing a good service and good quality to your customer, that's when you're going to get issues like this. Now,
so that's the important bit. Just quickly before you go on, I just want to jump in and say that we have access to, generally speaking, as third-party repairers, to 2 broad range of parts. They are either aftermarket components that have been reverse engineered by a independent company that then makes the LCD or the OLED display and the screen assembly from there, and then sells it to the market. And just to be clear, this thing has, not only does it have no Apple branding on it whatsoever anywhere to be found, it even had people, just to really make the point clear to Apple, I guess, and to the public, is that these they often have a separate brand on them altogether with some, what seems to be a just random set of alphanumeric digits. But anyway, the point is they are one set of screens that are available to us. Another one would be either to obtain, and in the interest of giving a good quality component to a customer, either to replace the glass on the outside of their phone only, if you wanted to actually take that screen assembly off their phone and then refurbish that exact screen assembly that has a working display and touch function on it with brand new glass after just the glass was cracked, you could do that. Or, given that that's possible, that someone might get access to a bunch of those screens in the supply chain across the world and then refurbish that screen themselves. It's those screens that Ricky's talking about there, which are much better quality than the aftermarket ones. I should add that. The aftermarket ones, whilst we can debate for hours about the quality levels of them and all the different types you can get and this kind of thing. One thing for sure is that they are yet to be anywhere near the quality of a well refurbished iPhone screen. So,
cool. Can you hear that?
Can
you hear that? Can you hear that? That's the sound of all the bedroom repairers that use nothing but generic rubbish screens, saying in their head or out loud, "They are as good. They're great. Okay. They're really good." Okay. But yeah, I completely agree with you, Tim.
Right. Yeah. So it's so given that, and we've got options. Do we either just succumb to only using inferior quality components, or do we make sure that we're only using the best quality components for our customers? Or the other model that a lot of people use is to offer a combination of both and make this all known to their customers in some way, shape or form by quality levels or grading or something, or different language, which gets very messy. But either way, that's all what is happening for all of us. So what Ricky is explaining there is that, given he's an outstanding fella and he wants to make sure that he's giving good quality components to his customers, he is challenged by something that seems to be strange. And now I just want to ask you a question here, Ricky, is that for anyone out there who's hearing this and didn't realize this even happens, there's a lot of people, I reckon. I think you're saying something here which is many, many people are in the dark too. They understand. I mean, there's still people, blows my mind, that will message, and I don't mean anyone any ill respect here. People have busy lives. They, find out information on different times. I fully understand it, but they still coming to terms with the fact that there's a message that comes up on an iPhone when any other screen other than the original ones just says, "Oh, we don't recognize this." It says the system doesn't recognize this component. You need to take it to an Apple store, or whatever the message says. The thing here is that you're not given a message. So there's no message to say anything about some sort of error or problem. This is just something that organically over time you would notice and other people would notice, and therefore you take all that information from all over the place and you start getting the pattern recognition side of your mind in place, and you start going, hang on a second, I've noticed that too. I think the other day, I saw someone else say this, and then before you know it, you've seen a pattern between the serial. So it's the serial number of the screen itself. I mean, how do we word this? Of the IC or the ALS data that's inside?
There's two touch ICs and there's two EEPROMs in there, read-only memories.
Right.
I don't even know what serials or what components are part of this IC are doing this. When you're talking about the aftermarket and the screens that you were talking about a minute ago, I mean, you can get aftermarket screens where they reuse. So you can take a broken iPhone X screen and you can take the original flex off of it and you can apply it to the aftermarket screen. Generic screens, how they technically work is completely different to original screens. They take the power for their digitizer and their LCD or OLED from different parts of the circuit. They completely bypass the limitations that are in place for the Apple original screens. However, you run risks of damaging the device doing that. And there isn't a wholesaler yet in China or anywhere outside of China which sells these displays and also lists the technical differences between these and original screens. I.e., this screen draws this much more power from this part of the circuit than the original one. It's very unlikely that it will damage but there's a chance it could damage on the circuit. There is none of that. How can you call yourself a repair technician without even asking for this type of information? You're not a repair technician. That's ridiculous. You should know this, and you should be able to spout the technical information to your customers if you're using them. So the IC issue, which I believe is something that people aren't going to be aware of. Some people might even be listening to this going, what the hell is a display IC? What the hell is True Tone? This touch panel IC issue that I've tested for and my data shows is accurate. I've got no idea why. I'm not even going to go as far as to trying to explain how and why. I have no idea. I know that this contains what looks like two touch ICs and two EEPROMs inside there. I've no idea what the operating system does with its magic to talk to these, to get the touch to work or to not work. All I do know is that the operating system knows what the originally paired serials of all of the ICs in that IC are, not just the EEPROMs, the read-only memories, but the touch ICs. It knows all of those serials, and I know that operating system is more than clever enough to be coded so that if they do not match the original serial number, all of them, then you're going to get touchscreen issues.
So are you saying that potentially that I plug in my iPhone, and I open up iTunes and I do a software update. At some point, that specific version of iOS, just maybe I'm completely off here, but are you saying that potentially that version of iOS that I'm then moving onto the phone understands that information about the display and which maybe manufacturer of that display or something specific about that IC that's on there, it knows that, and so therefore or do you know what I'm saying?
I'll sum it up with an XS. We had an XS that came back yesterday. We did the repair in December. It came back yesterday under warranty for touchscreen issues. Half of the touchscreen didn't work. The original screen didn't work. It was a broken LED. So we haven't refurbished it. We haven't recycled it. We found it in our stock of broken screens. We found that screen. The screen that we took off of the phone, which worked from December until July. The screen that we took off, which did not work on that phone, we put onto an LCD tester to test it. Worked absolutely fine, no problem. We then took it off and put it on another iPhone XS. Worked, no problem. That's worked from December till July with no problem. Suddenly it's got no touch on that phone. but it works fine on other phones. Now, there's people that are going to be listening to me explain that in that way, and then they're going to think, cool, yeah, there was that time I did the repair, and a few weeks or a few months later, the customer came back and the touch wasn't fine. So I swapped over a new one, and that was fine. And I sent it back to the wholesaler. The wholesaler likely refunded it because they're not putting out any information around this. They just want to sell more screens. They probably gave that out to another person or recycled it. So that happened yesterday with an iPhone XS. What I could have done with this iPhone XS was taken the IC off of the screen that they had fitted, put the original IC on it, and then the screen would have been fine again because it would have seen the original serials from the original IC again. I didn't. I got a whole new screen, and they got a whole new screen because it had some scratches on it, and I wanted the customer to be happy. But that's a return that we've stomached, that's come into us. That is although they're not unhappy, that's a customer that's been out without their device a couple of days, and there's nothing wrong with the part. There's nothing wrong with it. It works fine. There's nothing wrong with it. There's no reason why that should have come back other than whatever is baked into iOS updates. Now, I don't know how, what, and why. But all I do know is the iPhone X was released in November 2017, and Apple have a touchscreen return program. So if you've got a touchscreen issue with your iPhone X, they've got a whole program with it. They've basically admitted that they're faulty. I don't know whether that's the digitizer or whether it's the IC or if there's a combination of both that they've got on the screens, but they've got a whole program open for this for people that have got touchscreen issues with their iPhone X. From 3rd of November 2017, the iPhone X release date, until beginning of June, I didn't even think about this. Now we're talking
that's right.
Nearly 2.5 years. And I didn't think about this. And I spend every single moment of my working life looking for issues like this to try and stay ahead of the game. It took me 2.5 years. I didn't even think about the actual IC.
The implications there are just huge. I mean, there's so many. The first one, internally, our industry, you've got wholesalers that imagine the scale of them that have received components back again, having someone filed for some sort of faulty part. They get them back again. And, I mean, then what? If they, I guess, are testing them again, if that's part of their routine, and then they're either replicating that or not, and if they're not, maybe they think, well, I'm just going to send it back out again or send it back to whoever bought it or whatever, and if they do replicate it, they agree that it's a faulty part. But this thing just may have just both of those times been tested on a phone that never had that particular IC paired to it. Correct. And so therefore, oh man, it blows my mind.
So the wholesalers,
any wholesaler listening to this, everyone needs to know this. Not only that, every this is repair shops as well, because that would mean that if you'd actually put it on there, you would have thought it was faulty, and you were, it comes back 6 months later and the touch isn't working, so half of the screen's not working, and you're just basically doing something under warranty for your customer. That screen was probably fine. It's just had an update. It's had this happen now, and there's nothing to tell you or reveal any of this information to you that this is the case. It's so bizarre.
So for the wholesalers,
but someone has to write code, right? Someone at Apple is writing code, of course, right? And so then the next thing that I'm sort of got in my head is, because this is my head just blows apart here. Is it intentional? You know what I mean? Like, is that intentional?
Well, let's remember Error 53. Which we spoke about in a previous episode. That was a bug, remember? That was just a bug that happened to sell them loads of new phones for a few years. No, this is deliberate. They do not want people like us using good quality parts. And for wholesalers, any wholesalers listening, for years, we've known about issues like this since the iPhone 7, 7 Plus screens. Other than Touch ID and the obvious ones. We've known about calibration things since the 7 and 7 Plus. For wholesalers, you're burying your heads in the sand, and you're creating a false economy for yourselves.
But can you believe? Oh my God! Can you believe this? So let's talk about a chess game. There's 2 chess games here that have just been played between us and Apple. The first one is we're going to release an iPhone 11, and then if you swap the screens, it's going to have a message for your customers that's going to say that don't trust this guy, just swap the screen, basically, because we don't know where it's from. Okay, so that's one chess move that they've played. That's one that we can see in plain sight. But then there's this other game that we're talking about now, which is a chess move that is not accidental. No one just accidentally, just randomly placed a piece on the board somewhere. They've actually picked up a piece and placed it exactly where they want to, but they've done it in a way that you can't even see the game. You're blindfolded, and now you're told to make a move, and you have no idea what they just did. That is really, really divisive. That is so divisive.
Since the last episode, I say the last episode, we haven't put it live. Since we spoke to Henrik, I've come away and thought about that. I've heard about other cases, and then I've dedicated this time to, I really wanted a good 1 month sample of data to be able to actually speak on this and say anything. And my data shows that what my theory in practice is correct. Now, after future iOS updates, that may change. I'm not sure. But as of right now, it's completely nuked the touchscreen returns that we've had. Now, the screens that I've used in the past, it is good to mention now that I've spent a lot of time on retaining the original touch panel and the original touch panel IC when refurbishing the iPhone X and up. Because for me, anything that can go back to as factory standards is the best quality that you can give for your customer. So I've spent a lot of time on doing this. A lot of refurbishers that do the job that I do, they can't do it because it's a lot of work to be able to do it. It's a lot harder than you'd think. The screens that we're putting out that have been coming back for touch issues, some of them have been these ones. So they've got the original digitizer, the original touch panel. They've got the original touch panel IC, be it from another phone, but like that's no different to pulling a screen off of a phone and putting it on another and then getting touchscreen issues. So I'm not going to speak on this too much more. What I'd say to wholesalers is, you have a responsibility to give your clients this information. At the moment, with the iPhone X and up, you're seeing returns for touch issues which do not exist. I know you are. You know you are. If you're a repairer and you're seeing these issues, you know you are. If you're saying you're not, you're lying. You know you are, unless you're using generic parts. Start talking about it. Stop trying to bury your heads in the sand and pretend it's not there, because each generation of phone, it's more and more. It's the next thing. It's the next thing. And yeah, you might be able to go off and sell parts for light bulbs and parts for dishwashers and parts for that. But what's going to happen to your client base? Your client base that you care so much about, they need to know this stuff. They need to learn about this stuff. What better way to learn about this stuff than to learn it directly from the person that they trust and they buy their parts from? You have a responsibility to put that information out there. You have, since the iPhone 7 Plus, it hasn't gone unnoticed, and the tactics that are being used against the repair industry have continued.
Yeah, and in a silent way. That is just, it's mind-boggling that, I mean... Okay, so just quickly, devil's advocate, as we should always do, is there any chance that this is just accidentally some sort of coding that's just been... I mean, okay, so when Apple... So what would happen in an Apple store, right? Because they're obviously... Do you want to just touch on that? So they'll take the screen, and then what do they do? They use
their screens are stocked with one SKU. Their screens are stocked with one SKU. They have a new... Let's take an iPhone X, for example, right? An iPhone X. The screen... has a new touch panel IC. The screen comes with a new earpiece sensor flex. One part of that earpiece sensor flex is paired for Face ID to work. Without that calibrated to the logic board, the Face ID function will be disabled. It's coded deliberately to disable because it doesn't match. What Apple or an AASP or an IRP can do is they can plug in the new screen, and the touch IC would be different. The sensor flex would be different, but they'd plug the phone into a MacBook that's running their calibration software, and they would recalibrate the device. That would teach the secure enclave what the new serial numbers were for the new component. So it would teach you what the new Touch IC panel IC serial numbers were, and it would teach you what the new earpiece sensor flex serial was. And after it had finished calibrating, it would then re-enable the software functions that are in the operating system, because the serial numbers were they matched the secure enclave. So after a software update where a customer with a replacement screen from Independent may update their phone and then suddenly half of their screen isn't working, if the serial number of the IC on that screen was the one that the secure enclave was looking for, after a software update, the touchscreen would still work. There would be no issue. So they have got access to the calibration software. Now, why don't we have access to this calibration software?
Oh, yeah, that's always the $1 million question. Right. Why don't we? I don't know.
Why? If it's a security issue, can the end consumer not open the app using their two-factored iCloud account, which is safe enough to store their personal health data and their banking details? If it's safe enough for that, and all their personal pictures and everything, if it's safe enough for that, why is it not safe enough and appropriate enough for them to be able to recalibrate a new screen or a new earpiece sensor flex so that the software functions on their device still work? Why? Who makes that decision? Why? Why does the consumer decide to lose? Why do they deserve to lose the functions and have to be without their device for a small amount of time while this display gets fixed again when they've done nothing wrong and the repairer's done nothing wrong?
All right, so devil's advocate again.
Yeah.
Because Apple's a clever company and they have the ability, unlike maybe car companies regarding dodgy parts from dodgy car mechanics. Maybe they do all of this to protect customers and so they understand that this company that you're taking the device to is not Apple, and therefore they might be, which is really important, using bad quality components. We can't guarantee their workmanship, who they are, what they're doing, and we want to make sure that you're getting good quality components all the time, so we're able to put these messages. And this one's a bit different, right? Because this is actually causing random, bizarre touch problems to half the screen most of the time. I think it is
it's random. Sometimes the touch is phantom. Sometimes the touch doesn't work at all. Sometimes it's half the screen, either vertical or horizontal. It's completely random. But all I do know is, I don't know how or why. All I do know is the issues have disappeared after swapping the IC on every screen repair.
Right, and that's enough to know that there's something here. This is not. That's the evidence. That's the equivalent now of the world. How many years ago? Maybe 2-3 years ago, when there was a controversy about Apple throttling the CPU in order to, regarding the battery thing and everything, and then the $29 battery,
And did we find out about that? Did they disclose that as part of a software update before it was discovered? No, it was discovered by someone who just randomly had a little bit of an idea, did a little bit of a test, and so as far as I'm concerned,
you are that someone. Right now,
potentially, but I've got no idea technically why. And I'm asking. I mean, here it is. Here's the data. Wholesalers, journalists. There you go. Find out what's going on.
Right, exactly. And anyone who can get into the source code of iOS, who can understand any of that and exactly at what point the reason this is happening, I guess. Yeah.
Listen, Tim. This is we're just over an hour, so we've got to start wrapping this up. But there's one other subject that I want to touch on. And that is, we didn't set out on this to bring up names or other organisations, other bodies, but I want to touch on right to repair, especially in the USA. Now, this serialisation thing has been slowly walked towards us now since Touch ID on the iPhone 5S, years and years ago. It is the whole argument, and I've said it in private circles now for a good couple of years, the whole argument hinges on this serialisation stuff. Schematics don't matter. Parts don't matter. We can figure those things out by ourselves if needed. Serialization, we do not stand a chance against. At the moment, you've got AASP and IRP, or anyone that's authorized by a manufacturer, and then you've got everyone else. Now, it might be that you've got a shop in town, and the other shop that's in town, Fred's Repairs, you absolutely despise each other. You're always undercutting each other. You're saying bad things about each other. It's awful, yeah? People listening that do own repair shops, that are repair technicians, if that person, if Fred's Repairs is not authorised by an OEM, if they're not an AASP or they're not an IRP, they are on your team. Whether you like it or not, right now, they are on your team and you are fighting the same battle. The serialisation of components is 2 steps ahead, 3 steps, 10 steps ahead of access to schematics and access to parts. This is the argument which, when you're sitting in front of congressmen that are 50, 60 years old that have no idea what you're talking about, this is something that's very easy to demonstrate. And this is something that can very easily show how end consumers are affected and are hindered. This is something that's very easy to display and it's something that's very easy to argue. It's also something that is very easy for Apple to try and sweep under the carpet if you're focusing your time and your effort on talking about things like data recovery or a data for a repair. Because although that might be your bread and butter, and that's what you do day to day, that is not what the majority of third-party repair is. It's not what a majority of customers or clients for third-party repair are looking for. That is just your small niche part of the market. The majority are looking for screen repairs, battery repairs, and things like that. And it's very easy. All the information is here and in our previous episodes. It's all online anyway, to display why serialization is the main battle. Now, for me, right to repair, even if we got access to parts and schematics right now, with the serialization, none of it makes any difference. With the way that they're slowly walking this, none of it makes any difference at all. All of the attention needs to be paid on serialization, not just iPhones, but MacBooks, all devices, Huawei, Samsung, Google Pixel, the whole thing. Keep an eye on all of them, test them, make it transparent with updates, software, with hardware updates about what's happening and why it's beneficial to the end consumer. That needs to organically start happening. People need to start looking for this stuff and talking about this stuff. As good as it is you and me putting this podcast out to a few hundred people every time that we record it, every week or every month or whenever we're going to do it, it's not enough. People need to spread the message. People need to, if your competitor is not authorized, it's not an IRP or ISB or authorized by Samsung or Huawei or anyone, they are your friend. You need to speak to them. You need to share information. We need to grow together. That needs to start organically happening.
Well said. On that note, should we call it there? For
sure. Tim, it's been a pleasure. Let's get together again very soon because I do enjoy doing these. I do miss hearing your voice.
Yeah, likewise, man. I really enjoyed that. And until next time, can't wait.
Take care. Bye.
See you, mate. Bye.
Right, I'm going to stop the voice memo.